Let's be honest, sustainability can feel overwhelming at times. Between climate headlines and eco guilt, it's easy to think you need to overhaul your entire life to make a difference. But the truth is, small, consistent shifts are where the magic happens. That's why we're chatting to Wendy White-Finnigan, CEng MICE. I'm putting the letters in there, Wendy, because it's amazing. From the Way Forward 2045, a sustainability champion on a mission to make low impact living more accessible, realistic, and joyful. Whether you're just starting your journey or looking to deepen your habits, Wendy's here to share top tips and to take us all into 2026 for a greener, calmer, and more intentional life. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. What an introduction, Claire. Thanks very much. Yeah,
It's
so yeah,
lovely to have you.
yeah, at Christmas time with sustainability, it definitely feels like a real tension holding place around what you do with it. But we've got a fairly huge mission, the way forward, and it's driven by our vision. And our vision is to have inspired, empowered, nudged, and motivated over 10 million unique individuals to raise their biodiversity footprint and to lower their carbon footprint. And that's through all the different ways in which we sort of run our business right now. So whether that's holiday, whether it's training, whether it was through a retail unit, literally across all the platforms that we sort of move into. So yeah, that's kind of
That is
how
a
we're
big
setting all
mission.
this up. Yeah, it's a fairly massive, but it's sort of I found with the team, when I build the team, it actually gives them a really clear direction of, what are we actually doing? Because sometimes it all feels a bit disjointed, but everything kind of under that umbrella. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And how did it all come about, Wendy?
So I've been involved in climate and sort of the periphery for a number of years. Is that my initials that you read out is because I'm a chartered civil engineer, and I've always worked in waste and poo and sort of been involved in the circular economy, which is sort of, the whole idea of keeping products for longer, or particularly within our waste streams. And we have lots of waste streams from lots of different sources, finding, a different way to apply them. So when I exited my first business, which is prior to lockdown, and I sat down with my son, and at that point, all the governments were doing their net zero pledges, and we're going to be net zero by 2045. Hence the reason for the company's name, which is what's the way forward to 2045. And my son and I sat down, and again, we were probably into lockdown by this point, and everything that we'd thought about, which was working with him through his gym stuff, food, healthy food, body, nourishing our body. So it was more on that sort of personal level, which is tackling sustainability, but also that sort of your body part, which is where my son's got lots of experience. Um, and we sat and tried to figure out what we could do locally. And during lockdown, it was difficult because we kind of thought the world was never going to look the same again.
Yeah,
And lots of challenges. So it started from that position, because after exiting the business, I was definitely much more intentional that for um, the next 50 years of my life, I'd had sort of a big birthday that time, having the next 50 years of my life. I wanted to be really intentional about everything that I was doing in my business was approaching a way to protect the planet. So that was kind of the starting point. What it was going to look like changed because of COVID. Retail's really difficult. We shut our shop down in February this year, which was really sad. But unfortunately, rising utilities just made it impossible. But um, and obviously you need to pay the bills. So there is
yeah.
elements of the work we do. I work with much bigger companies currently sort of through not consultancy, I'm very much operational. I'm involved in the businesses with their staff and their teams. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how it started. But it was how do we sort retail? How do we involve people in a more effective way? And how do we bring gamification into it? And that's the bit that we're not quite got a solution for yet, but we're still working on it in the backgrounds about how we gamify things, but not in a punishing way, but in a fun way.
Yeah, to get more people bought into the mission and how
Yeah.
they can actually be a part of it as well.
Yeah, rewarding the right behaviour. A lot of the stuff that we have in place right now, it penalises people. It doesn't actually reward people for doing the right thing. And a lot of the challenges about sustainability are hidden behind masses of greenwashing and huge marketing budgets. So,
So
um,
see when you say greenwashing, Wendy, what do you mean by that for anybody that's watching this that doesn't know?
So this is sort of it's very specifically in the marketing, and it's now I'm going to say it's not necessarily illegal, but you're not allowed to use phrases like carbon neutral on your websites unless you can absolutely fundamentally demonstrate through scientific or statistics that you are in fact carbon neutral. And there's a lot of the Advertising Standards Agency have actually started to prosecute people. Now the organisations are prosecuting or aiming to prosecute are the likes of Nike, big brands, because it's because they're saying, oh, we are eco-friendly and we don't pollute, and they kind of got great big strap lines. So as a consumer, you go out and you don't always do that deep dive of homework. You look at a brand, you think, well, that brand's a good brand, they won't be doing that, so I'll buy them. And when they slap this sort of we're environmentally friendly, carbon neutral, it just reinforces that purchasing habit. So they're now starting to be penalised quite heftily through fines. And actually, it's quite ironic that if they're causing pollution, the fines are quite tiny because of the legislation at the moment, and they need to be caught, and they're quite lengthy. Whereas there's actually greater powers currently through the advertising sort of fining route. Um, and that seems to be the route that companies are, it's about that reputational damage. So the fines are coming through, um, yeah, preventing companies from greenwashing. So stating that they're greener than they actually are.
Interesting. And I guess unless you're a major, well, would it be easier for a smaller company to say they're eco-friendly? Like, so they're looking for proof, basically, the Advertising Standard Agency. If you use any of these eco-friendly slogans, that you can prove that you are, which is a good
Yeah.
thing because
It is a good thing. And you're absolutely right. It's actually easier for larger corporates because they've got bigger marketing budgets, they've got bigger consumers, and they kind of have that sort of, elbowing out ability and they've got a big legal team. So, there's lots of ways. Smaller businesses tend not to have that in place, to be able to even legally fight anything. So it's usually they're not as able to
mhm, to make the
to
claims.
to um, to make the claims. Yeah,
Okay, interesting. Okay, so you kind of touched on this as well about the kind of penalisation element of sustainability, but sustainability, it can sometimes feel a bit like an all or nothing mindset, can't it? So what would you say to somebody who wants to start making changes but feels overwhelmed? Because I think sometimes you can say to yourself, right, I'm start using, like, as a female, reusable period wear. I'm going to start doing this, I'm going to start using reusable makeup wipes and all these different things. But then there's maybe something that you're doing in your life and you're like, that completely annihilates that. So, what would you say to anyone who's literally just looking at their life thinking, what can I do? It's like small changes to
yeah.
start with.
That so. I mean, the overwhelming nature is really real, and a lot of the sort of analysis that's happening right now is about the anxiety that lots of people, regardless of their age, and you can see whether you're a baby boomer right up to sort of Gen A, etc., that the climate actually has a huge impact, and it's up to about 35% of individuals state that they're anxious and overwhelmed simply as a result of having that going on in the background the whole time, and the constant negative messaging that you get coming in. So what I would say is that, start at the bits that annoy you. Start at the bits that, we all, like you mentioned, the reusable period wear. That's a really good example of something that is highly recommended. You're reducing plastic, you're reducing manufacturing of the products in the first place, you're reducing the fact that a lot of that sanitary wear ends up in the waters. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of a really good example. The reusable wipes, I'll come back to you on that. But
Mhm.
later on. But you
Yes.
said did you say what's the three swap? Sorry, I'm just trying to.
So this is more like what would you say to somebody who wants to start making changes but feels overwhelmed?
Oh yeah. I mean, everything that annoys you. So there's lots of things I'm sure everybody will have, it's to me it's about my particular example, if you like, when I was talking to James about the shop, we were standing in one of the big supermarkets and I was needing to buy some light bulbs. And I've got overhead spotlights. Um, and I stood there thinking, right, I need to choose an environmentally friendly light bulb. And it literally, there was so much choice, apart from the fact that I struggled to actually figure out which light bulb is the right light bulb anyway, regardless of them
Mhm.
sort of taking it down further. And I went home with no light bulbs because I actually couldn't choose because I kind of made the decision when I looked at it. I thought, well, I'm going to guess that the £10 light bulbs, £10 per light bulb, is probably the most environmentally friendly. But that's me
Mhm.
making that huge assumption there that some big brand
Yeah.
hasn't just done something. And I'm going to assume if I can buy four light bulbs for £1, that they are not environmentally friendly. And for me, that was kind of where I came back. I thought, I need to look into this more. I need to look into the companies. I need to go into companies' house. I need to start to figure out where I can do it. So for me, it was light bulbs that just annoyed me.
Hmm.
And then I went and did a little bit of research. So I thought, this is the light bulb I'm going to buy right now. And I think it's the same with, whatever product or whatever thing it is that you get irritated about or you see the advert. Um, just pick one thing. Don't, yeah. And usually when you pick one thing, you'll start to go, okay, I've only got one choice to make today. And I'm going to choose that choice today. And then I'm going to make that my default choice because I will understand that that brand or those several brands will start to, if you trust a brand to be doing things right, it kind of removes that daily anxiety that you can trust that they're
Yeah.
already doing all that stuff that's already going on. And I always recommend anyone go to the B Corp website as well, because on there you've got a whole load of small businesses and some large businesses. Patagonia are on there. But
Brilliant.
so yeah, I would say pick
Okay,
with
so
one small thing, something that you can change within your own day-to-day activities that's, ticks all your boxes.
yeah, I love that because then it can almost snowball, doesn't it? And if you start there, that's a good starting point. And then the next question was similar to what you've just said. Three easy sustainable swaps or habits you can recommend people try out in 2026. So say they've already started, they've picked one thing, but what would be an additional kind of three swaps or habits that you think would be kind of easily sustained for people?
Uh, so this is always a bit where I struggle, if I'm honest with you, because I'm very aware that sometimes the swaps are dearer. And this is
Yeah,
kind
I
of the
know.
challenge, it's
Yes.
kind of like, well, I can't afford to do that, and having been in that situation myself. So I've kept it. I've got three things here. The first one is food. So
Hmm.
our food chain accounts for 35% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So that
Well,
includes transportation, the growing of it, the food waste, and the food waste part of it accounts, and this is in the UK particularly, for 6% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So these are
wow.
fairly huge standard figures. So shop local,
Hmm.
buy what you need, ignore the bog off stuff that's going on. Those are huge marketing machines that through conversations with some of the big companies anyway, they're only doing that to get cash flow and they're not actually making any profit about that's about maintaining cash flow. So actually they're deliberately lowering the price of the product just simply to get you to buy too much. And sometimes that's done because they've got a stock in the background and they have to get rid of it or they have to pay commercial waste charges for it. But what they do is end up making it the consumer's problem because everybody goes in and buys that bog off thing and then you find out that you've got this extra stuff that you don't need.
Yeah.
One of the things around food is it's not about the product, it's about the people and the process behind it. So have you heard of Moscow milk? They're sort
No.
of one of the organic milk suppliers. They're fairly vocal on LinkedIn and certainly worth a follow to look as well because they talk about it specifically from high processed foods and obviously their organic milk. So the carbon footprint, and if we're using numbers and statistics, it can all get really messy. And if I'm honest, lots of this stuff isn't fully defined anyway, which is why I say try to look at the behind the scenes. So the carbon footprint of, say, a glass of local organic milk, like Moscow milk, versus a punnet of mushrooms. The mushrooms will have a higher carbon footprint because of the process that they're used to make them. But they're still way down the list when you compare them to other products. So a lot of the time the messaging gets lost in that milk is bad and this is good and vegan's best. And I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm just saying that when you start to look at the process and the people behind each product, you can change the carbon footprint significantly simply by the people that are employing it and the processes that they're using to make it. So that's again just looking a bit, and again the B Corp will give you that details.
Okay, brilliant.
Shopping at Green City, things like that. They're a Glasgow-based wholesaler. So for food, definitely start to look at the product, look at the ingredients. Anything that's got multiple ingredients behind it, the carbon footprint will be significantly bigger as well, generally.
Okay.
Second thing is pollution. So that's where, come back to your reusable wipes, biodegradable, flushable wipes. They're not a thing. It doesn't work. They create more problems. Any of the places where they are compostable, we don't have any of those facilities in Scotland that would work within the time scale that they would need to work. So you flush them down the toilet, they end up being a problem at your wastewater treatment works because they're not degradable in the time that it takes the waste to pass through. The same if they went to anaerobic digestion plants, they're not degradable in the time. So anything that says biodegradable or flushable with regards to face wipes or things like that, it's a no-no. So for me, just stop doing it. I use face cloths. Just use a face cloth.
Yeah.
You wash it, you shove it in the washing machine with the rest of your washing. So you use that.
Yeah.
The reason why that's important is it pollutes the water.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with the water, our oceans are 70 to 71% of the Earth's area, but they act as carbon sinks. So they're a bit like our overdraft. So when we make too much carbon dioxide, the oceans absorb them. But I don't know if you noticed last week in the news, they've now registered that we've reached our first global tipping point, which pretty much the coral reefs, which are down to about 2%, have now got to the point that the repair of them is unlikely given the continual pollution that's going into the water. So it's effectively filling your overdraft up to the point that you've got no overdraft left, so everything else has to stay where it is. So that's for that one. Another one I thought of was baths. I love a bath. I am definitely a bath person over a shower person. However, and my colleague that I worked with, Lana, that was one of her things she made. And when we did the carbon literacy, she uses baths as a self-care process, candles, books, TV, video, whatever she does in the bath. Changing that to a shower. You use less water, you lose potentially less product that's not full of whatever chemicals as well. And then it takes it down to the submarine shower. A submarine shower is basically a 30-second shower. And I always say good luck with teenagers with that one, because there's no way any of my children would have ever done a 30-second shower. But doing that per family, per home can reduce your usually through the heating, not the water. So it's the heating required to do it. But by the process of doing that as well, you're actually saving money at the same time. And they reckon that if every person reduced their shower time, by a minute, that you would save about £215 million worth in energy costs. So that's energy companies losing £215 million if we all reduced our shower by a minute. So those are three big ideas.
They are big ideas, but even if you're having like 5-minute shower, if you have a 4-minute shower, like you're even if you can't manage the 30-second submarine, although see now you've said that, tomorrow morning I'm going to be in that shower and I'm going to be like, start the clock.
Yeah, I've only ever done it once, and it's efficient. It's efficient.
I can imagine it's efficient.
But it's not something I would want to do every day. But yeah, tend to stay ahead for a 3-minute shower. Go for a 3-minute shower. I have a bath. I have a bath at least once a week because it's usually my downtime, but I offset it by trying to make sure the rest of it's done other times.
Okay, loving these tips. Right, okay, they seem like good things to look at. So you're looking at food, you're going on the B Corp website, you're looking at the kind of process behind the food, you're looking at lowering your shower, and you're looking at just more like so face cloths instead of white. Like, because you
Yeah,
can get the reusable pads for your
yeah,
makeup and
that's it.
stuff. So that instead. Okay, right. Okay, fabulous. So you often talk about living with intention. Can you explain what that means in a sustainability context?
Yeah, so I don't fly within the UK at all anymore. I only take the train. And as others will tell you, it is probably more expensive depending on the different routes. But I live in a village in Ayrshire, so I actually have a train station. So I can be in London in 5 hours. And I always take the view that that gives me 6 to 10 hours more productive work. Because even if I was flying by plane, it would by the time I got to Glasgow, did all the check-in, I'm not able to do productive work in any of that time because you're in transit the whole time. You know, you're never in a position always where you do work. So for me, living with intention is going, okay, where are the areas in the day-to-day of my life that I can
Mm.
actually start to live my values? I don't shop with certain consumers anymore, simply, and it might be down to the fact that I know that they've been charged for pollution or for the advertising standards agencies, and that will go from certain types of brands of petrol you know, the fuel. I have an electric car now, which is fabulous, but I didn't until recently. So there's certain stations, brands of fuel that I just would never buy because I know what they're doing in Nigeria with regards to pollution and the challenges that are there. And they're still arguing that they're not polluting, and I'm involved with some of that. Companies that have been fined with greenwashing. So I suppose for me, the intention is we all need to live. And the only, you know, the Ecuador is currently the country that has the lowest carbon footprint per person as a nation. And they kind of live almost within the planetarian. I've never been to Ecuador, but based on what I know about it, I don't really want to live like an Ecuadorian. And this is kind of the sort of tension that you're balancing is I don't want to go back to living in a cave. You know, I don't want to do things that mean that I can't travel, I can't visit friends. So I change who I buy from and I start to look at them and really investigate poor people practices because that has an impact as well as the pollution and the greenwashing. My car, I had a plug-in hybrid for 8 years. It died about 2.5 years ago, so that's some time I had a plug-in hybrid. And I couldn't afford at that time to replace it with either a second-hand electric vehicle or certainly
Yep.
not even a new one. So I talked about it a lot. I talked about it in a lot of the rooms that I'm in, because obviously a lot of the rooms I work in, people are talking about climate and they're saying it's really easy. And I'm said, yeah, it is, if you have an income that matches what you're expecting people to do. So living with intention for me, is pushing back when people say everyone should have an electric vehicle, and they come as well with their own set of challenges, obviously, particularly
Yeah.
around lithium batteries. But that's that being said, that's more the carbon footprint of a fully electric vehicle is slightly higher for building it, for the actual manufacturing is slightly higher than a normal diesel or petrol car. But obviously the operation of that over the lifetime of that car is massively different. And the
Yeah.
reason why it's slightly larger is due to the mining of lithium for the batteries, because around 70% of all lithium that's used is actually sourced in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there is obviously massive child labour practices that are really quite abhorrent. And that's why those statements are made about the cars. So then it's about looking to the type of car and the brand of car, and are they just trying to greenwash, or is there actually a really strong sustainability strategy on their website that you can hook into and go, okay, I'm going to question you. I had to buy collagen recently because I felt as though I was, you know, it was either something more permanent or some collagen for the lines. And I emailed one of the companies I'd been told about, and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to ask them. I couldn't find anything on the website. So I emailed them and said, I'm really interested in your product, but I can't see anything that gives me any detail about your sustainability strategy, where you source it, because it comes from the sea, lots of challenges in the sea with pollution. So, and they
Okay.
replied back within 48 hours with a reasonably lengthy email. So again, the intention bit, it removes convenience. It adds to your, am I going to get this the wrong way around? It's not as convenient. So when
I
you
know
live with
exactly
the
what you're saying.
intention, it's not as convenient. But for
Yeah.
me, I'm starting to build a portfolio of places that I'm like, okay, I know I can shop from you because you're trying. You're at least
Yes.
doing something better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess that aligns with your values as well, doesn't it? And then when you're living intentionally, you're living in alignment with your values. And I think that sounds it sounds like a good thing for people to start doing. I know a lot of people shop with brands that are socially conscious, be it the sustainability angle or be it what they're giving back to in their own community.
Yeah.
So, it is important for people to find these brands that aren't just profiting, they are giving back or they're trying to do things in the best possible way. So, I like that, living with intention, looking into brands, looking where you shop, seeing what their
Mm.
policies are and different things. And I guess for you, it's about finding brands that align with you and your values. And that makes a lot of
Yes.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so now we're coming. This is in the Christmas magazine, this interview. It's also going to be in
Yes.
our YouTube, so there might be some people watching out with the festive season. But there is a lot of pressure to consume around the holidays. What are your top tips for gifting and celebrating more consciously?
Oh, so you and I talked about this a little bit before we came on the call about my trip to Antarctica. So
Yeah,
that was an amazing experience. I arrived back from Antarctica around the 12th of December, and
okay.
I just could not, in 2023, and I could just not take part in Christmas that year. I just found it almost impossible for me I was in Antarctica for 4 weeks. So
Wow.
you kind of create, it's that thing that that becomes your life for those 4 weeks. It's not just a short hop. Um, so I couldn't take part in the flurry of consumption. I went out with my youngest daughter to try and get some good ideas and ended up sort of very quickly just saying, I'm not doing this, we're going home. So how do you make, I go back to what I've said, look at the different brands, look at the people. But I
Yeah.
think when thinking about that, don't buy tat. The day when you're walking around and you think, I don't think I've got my kids enough. I think that's probably where I would do it. Not bought my kids enough. So you immediately go out and you're buying fluffy socks, plastic toys, a whole load of other bits and bobs. And before you know it, you've spent 60 or 80 quid, but actually it's about, do you need to buy the tat? Because a lot of the time the tat is the stuff that comes with that low price point but higher impact elsewhere in the world. And it usually ends up in your bin. It's a bit like when you go to trade stands, all the tat that's there. If you're making tat, make it useful tat, make it tat that will extend beyond the Christmas period. Um, but I think one of the most important things at Christmas, shop local. I mean, for example, in this magazine, there's hundreds of women within the Glasgow Girls Club who actually have their own businesses, who are
Yeah.
creating experiences. And I can think of two or three that I absolutely want to onboard and do something with. And one of them creates art. I can't remember the lady, Carla, I think it is.
Oh,
She'll create art with
yes.
you. So
Yes.
what do you do? How do you create something that's quite unique, that's a memorable experience, but actually pay into a small business, provide a small business to actually, the innovation that they're bringing, the experience that they bring, and you're potentially learning a new craft and having fun with your family, and then a bit of art that celebrates that. And that's something I'm looking at doing this year, is that my parents, my two older children, it's very much experiences. They want to travel, they want
Yeah.
to, look at the world. So younger children, I'm always going to say it's difficult, but we do need to avoid plastic that's then, I don't know about you, but um, when you go to the tip or the what's it called, the recycling facility, after Christmas, you will always find masses and masses of toys that are still perfectly usable. I think we need to create a way of bringing that back in and perhaps moving those products out of your home before Christmas so that families who are not able to do it. So everything about Christmas, how long is it going to last for? is there somebody that will get use out of this afterwards?
Yeah.
And what can I do that'll lengthen the time that's around? One of the big things is that only 9% of our plastic is ever recycled. All the plastic that we collect and sort, that's all we're doing. The vast majority of it is baled, i.e., like big compactor bales, and then sold or given. I'm not quite sure commercially, everywhere will be different, but it's sold to countries like India, or other Asian countries where they use it as something called refuse-derived fuel, which means you're basically sending them baled plastic, which they then put in an incinerator and burn for their energy. So
Wow.
anything we do with plastic to reduce it starts to reduce the fact that do we discharge our rights for something being burnt in another country? And then that obviously some of that then ends up being their problem as well because it gets into it falls apart. Billionaires. This is definitely a topic I like to talk about because anything you find on the whole billionaires, who are the billionaires that own the companies and what companies are you shopping from that are billionaires? So it's again back to the intention, back to shopping local. If you're going to spend on stuff with people that matter. Spend on stuff with people that are actually paying their employees a real living wage, that they're not adding to pollution. So again, check out your magazine with all the wonderful women in it there and the
Oh,
businesses that they're doing. And
absolutely.
chocolate. My last thing on this sort of Christmas thing. I don't know if you saw I think it was last week, the week before. The biscuits, penguins, and clubs can
No.
now no longer be called chocolate bars because they do not have enough chocolate in them for them to be considered chocolate. So they're actually creating something that tastes like chocolate, as we would anticipate tasting like chocolate, tasting like using other fats such as shea oil and palm oil. Now, palm oil is one of the biggest contributors to deforestation in the world. So
Yeah.
again, you're
Yeah.
removing that whole thing. Whereas if again, we stopped selling chocolate in our shop because Green City stopped supplying some of the chocolates, and that was to do with renewal of the palm oil certificates. So we kind of got an earlier warning from that
Mm,
company that always let us know that chocolate is now becoming a problem. And the reason why it's becoming more expensive is because the cocoa beans require certain types of weather conditions. And obviously, climate change is changing the weather conditions as well, which means that the harvest is lower and lower. But yeah, penguins. I actually did a little post about that last week, calling it death by chocolate. My picture slapped on one of the penguins because we are now eating more highly processed products and things that are no longer chocolate, butter.
that's wild, isn't
So
it? That is
yeah,
wild. Yeah,
yeah,
you would never, ever, ever think that. Like, I don't really, I try not to eat biscuits hard, but I try not to. But when I was younger, I was certainly into clubs and penguins, and like, you would never think that you were being told it was a chocolate bar and it wasn't a chocolate bar. But then this is the problem with the food industry, isn't it?
yeah. And they
You,
and it's hidden because it's big. It's is it something like 5 global companies produce all the food that we eat unless you're buying locally. So yeah, that would be the other
that's a
thing
good.
about Christmas.
To see somebody who's a chocoholic though, right? And they are like, yeah, but I still need my fix. Is
Yeah.
there like, do you go for basically the high cocoa content? How do you look out for basically?
Yeah, hi Coke. I mean, there's a company called Divine, and I've got no connection to them whatsoever. But I usually, even though we're not running the retail unit anymore, we do sort of pop-up events every so often. So I use what's on the Green City website from a brand point of
Yeah,
view because I know that they do such a serious due diligence on all the products that they come in that but there are, yeah, high cocoa content. So, if you don't like dark chocolate, it's pretty rough on anyone. I happen to love dark chocolate and the higher
I
cocoa
love it.
yeah. And it's also really good with wine or coffee, so it works with my drinking habits as well.
Yes, it is good with wine and
Uh,
coffee.
it is, yeah. So yeah, that's and it's just really expensive. It's unfortunately very expensive. You're not looking at a £2 chocolate, but I still buy cheaper chocolate on occasion because I do every so often. Every month I have a
Yeah,
chocolate thing going on.
urge. I think we all
But
do.
I do try to buy from brands that I know are trying, and certainly not ones that are emulsify. You look on the back, if it says between 20 and 50% chocolate or cocoa, you can guarantee they're just making that up with anything else that they can to give it a fat content. So maybe just the ingredients list might be a good idea.
A good place to start,
A
right? I
good
feel like I'm
indicator. Yeah.
actually learning so much from you today, Wendy. Right, so you know that the GGC, we've got a social club, we've got a business club. You're one of our lovely business members. So for anybody who has a small business who is watching this video and they're thinking, right, but how can I be more sustainable with my business moving forward? Do you have a couple of tips, few top tips for them?
So it needs to be a team sport. One of the things I would say that's really important is this, and I do a lot. My core job is delivering climate, and I've got a training program, and it's an accredited training program called the Carbon Shift, and it literally is shifting your mindset. So it's stopping and looking and going, what am I putting out in my waste? What am I doing? So it's literally going through every single activity. And I appreciate that lots of smaller businesses, it might be more challenging, simply because your business model is built, but start when you're designing your business model to actually
Mhm.
go, okay, why am I looking for my waste solution to be really cheap? Or who can I work alongside? How can I collaborate better? And is my waste going to work with someone else? And can it elongate the life into it? There's lots of companies now. I'm not stating the big obvious one because they're actually really expensive, but they take fire hose and they make bags and other things
Okay,
using repurposed fire hose and things like that.
okay,
But 62% of the change that we need to make is literally behaviour change. Do a
okay.
climate policy. Be intentional about I'm going to walk to work 1 day a week. I'm going to walk to work whether it's raining or not. I'm going to make sure that I'm not adding or car sharing or public transport. Um, Most of the time, the solutions are really quite simple.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm thinking of the food businesses I'm in right now. So some of them, they're doing things like the way businesses, larger businesses, certainly those above sort of 20, 40, 50 people now, they're having to think about their commuting. So, but that's their employees computing because your greenhouse gas emissions are split into three scopes: scope one, scope two, which is your electricity, your purchased electricity, and your heating, sort of all covered in that. And then scope three is everything else: where you buy your toilet roll, how your employees get to work. And most of the big businesses that are legislatively now told they have no choice, there's lots of legislation, they have to provide a carbon accountancy for this. They're all stating that probably over 80% in every business, regardless of sector, the greenhouse gas emissions are in the supply chain. And
Okay.
that's not saying the supply chain's bad. That's saying that the reason why a lot of those bigger companies push back is because they use supply chains from all over the world that are perhaps not as ethically minded as
Mhm.
perhaps a company that might be down the road. So there's pushback everywhere because their business models are going to have to change. Think about Shein and Temu, for example.
Yeah.
If you're buying a hoodie for £3.50, you can absolutely guarantee that there's very few ethics and very few management of pollution around that hoodie.
Mhm.
Um, so, but if that was part of your core business model, you're really going to have to do an awful lot of changes to be able to make that because you're not going to be able to buy a hoodie for £3.50 anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, but uh, uh, I'm always happy, particularly within the Glasgow Girls Club, if anyone wants to sit and have a chat, because what would work for you and what would work for another business are all going to be ever so slightly different. And that's kind of what the biggest challenge is. It's not a one size fits all now. We're actually looking at how each individual business can make a change based on the people you've got in your business as well and the skills. So my training puts we build solutions and actually make them actionable and workable that can be used as part of their part of any disclosure they've got to make, or equally just in some businesses, it's about their brand profile, their B Corps, and a lot of the B Corps are very good at the ethical part of it and the corporate sustainability and the giving back. They've moved less forward on their pollution and their waste as well. So yeah.
Do you know that? I think just You saying that alone, this being a service that you offer as part of your business, automatically takes out that overwhelm. Because again,
Yeah.
be it a personal overwhelm about sustainability or it being about an overwhelm in your business, when you don't have a Scooby Doo, having someone like yourself who is an expert and who can actually help people tailor something exclusively or specifically for their business, that will be magic
Mhm.
to many people's ears. Because a lot of people I just don't think people will know where to start. So actually being able to have a
Yeah.
consultancy session with you, I think will make the world a difference to lots of businesses who are really looking to
Yeah.
start, doing positive changes for the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Definitely.
So
And
sorry, carry on, Wendy.
no, 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 it's fine. I was just going to do we try to do it without guilt or preaching as well, because for
Yeah,
me, it's about if you think about marketing, you've got your early adopters, your late adopters, and that chasm in the middle. Where I see we're at right now is we're at that chasm in the middle. We just need more movement and more resistance in order to sort of get the tipping point over. And that means that you're not judging people. And that to me is really important, that no one, there's lots of things I still don't do, but there's lots of things I do manage to do. But
yeah.
it comes at a cost in other ways.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess it's not about like completely overhauling your whole life so that it's unsustainable for you to live your life. Because
Yeah.
then that defeats the purpose. It's about creating a sustainable life with sustainable practices within it that are possible for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you said, affordable, because very often when it comes to like unfortunately in life, the big things that we can be doing with for our health when it comes to healthy eating and when it comes to making better choices for the planet, they all cost more, which seems to be so backward. It seems to
And there'll
sometimes
be a
almost
tipping
like an
point in
elite
that as
choice.
well. Yeah, there'll be a tipping point because, if you're reducing your pollution, reducing your showers, there's lots of things that will save you money being more
Yeah.
sustainable because you're not consuming as much, and there is a direct correlation. But there's a tipping point in companies that, for example, toilet paper. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different companies that are doing really different things right now. Now, you're going to pay more than your £2.99 for 18 toilet rolls somewhere else, but you will use less sheets. There's a little pun in there, isn't there? There'll be less sheet for each roll. But there'll be a tipping point where those companies, simply by creating the volume, or
Mm.
more competitors, or technology changing. And I can see that a lot across different things. So again, I keep going back to that early adopters curve. We're at a point right now where everything is in a transition. So it feels messy, it feels muddy in the legislations. Um, is there one more thing I can say actually? Just if I get time
Please
for that?
do.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
you
one
do.
of the things when I was in Antarctica that I asked, we had a lot of really very clever expedition leads and things, and I said, "Right, okay, how do I go back to my village and I don't look like a white privileged woman that's had the luxury of traveling to Antarctica? How do you take the knowledge and I can share it? And what do I encourage people to do? What would be the one thing?" And she said to vote. And I thought, okay. She says, but not with regards to the colour of the party, not with regards to where that is, to actually sit down with your MSP or email them and actually start to ask. Because contrary to what everyone believes when they're saying that, politicians are removing climate, they're not removing climate because they're not aware it's a problem, because they're still pushing on all the legislation that's coming down. And there's a lot of legislation sitting about to be ratified across different sectors. They're not talking about it because it's not a vote winner. So for
Wow.
me, it's like, okay, push your politician, start to ask your politician, ask them why they're not bringing it up, because a lot of our politicians are career politicians. They want to be reinstated. They're not necessarily wanting to do anything massive. So and this happened with me years ago when we got asked through one of the leadership programs we did with Scottish Enterprise to talk to your MSP. And it was actually the MP I spoke to on this occasion. And she said the only thing that she heard about in the area that I'm in, sort of Cumnock and Doon, was about broken bus shelters and antisocial behaviour. So she said, if that's all I'm hearing, that's all I'm addressing. So
Wow. Okay.
just, from businesses, lots of businesses, we're lucky in Scotland, we can get close to our MSPs. So start to ask them
Yeah.
specific questions.
I love that. I love
Mm.
that. And your Antarctica trip, like that was to go and the mission there was to learn about the climate change and everything, wasn't it, Wendy? Because I've seen some photos and it looks absolutely amazing. But that was a culmination of brilliant minds to look into what's happening to the planet, wasn't it?
Yes, it's a project called Homeward Bound. It's an Australian-led program. The woman who came up with it is Fabian Datner, and she's got a really clear vision around climate, but specifically with regards to gender. So it's very much
Mm,
about, as women-led businesses, we all know that sometimes, getting into rooms means you need big elbows and, big feet to get
mm,
in, and that, we're readdressing lots of the gender inequality. She was very aware that at a global level, at policy level, and UN and universities, etc., that when you were pushing to get more women in, what the women didn't have was that network with other women where they could start to build trust, and exactly what you're doing in the Glasgow Girls Club, building trust,
okay.
creating a bigger network, and actually empowering women to believe what they already know. But actually, it means that if there's other jobs coming up across, and I'm in a group chat with the 109 I went with, and lots of them share different jobs across the world. Again, about increasing the possibility that you'll get more female women and non-binary was actually the purpose of
Yeah,
the trip.
yeah.
So it was about making sure that women and non-binary saw more job applications and were open to more possibilities. So it was a two-prong of gender and climate. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Like
yeah.
that. Amazing. Okay, so what's your hope? This is quite a top line biggie. What's your hope for humans trying to live a little greener in 2026 and beyond? Obviously, as we venture towards 2045, which I feel as if it's going to be here before we know it, given how quickly the years are passing by. But what is your one hope for next year?
Oh, that is a really difficult one. My hope is that more people, and particularly women, that's one of my focuses as well, because globally women face 80% of the hardships associated with climate change. And that's for another conversation. I would probably need a lot of statistics because they don't sit in my mind the same, but they bear the brunt of climate change because they're in the caring roles, because of, the tasks that they do predominantly. I think it would be accept that there is, don't tolerate someone saying climate change isn't existing. Don't
Okay.
accept. My hope is that more people will say, I don't know all the answers, but you're not correct. More just that pushing back, just talking about it, starting to have conversations, a bit like when health and safety at work came into place, and all of a sudden health and safety is the top of every agenda. It's expected to be
Yeah.
the top of every agenda. Make climate the second thing, put health and safety. There is now more people dying every year from climate change in the UK than it works out about, on average, it's 51,000 over a number of years, but it works out around 1,500 people are actually dying every year in England and Wales, where the outcome is specifically climate change that's been put down. So all these statistics are there. At the moment, there's 130 people every year still die through poor health and safety at work, and we're still pushing that. The thing with climate change that's hard is it's not necessarily attributable to a business as
Yeah.
such. But if you continue to talk about it and continue to put it in your agenda, so that would be my hope for next year. Put it in your agenda, even if you don't know what you're talking about, even if it's just a heading, and go, what we're going to talk about today about climate. So that's just put it in your agendas.
Yeah, and making it, as you say, if it's not specific to a business, but if it's specific to the collective humanity, then what a change.
Yep,
People just started making small changes across the globe, then that's a massive change, isn't it?
yep. Yes, huge.
So,
Yep,
okay, okay, right. That's been amazing, and I have literally learned so much from you, and I've got some thoughts in my own mind as well, which we can chat about separately. I love what you were saying about the
perfect.
gender and climate change, because I am a big, massive raging feminist, and
Yes.
yeah, I really want women to lead and rise. Okay, but let's just go a wee bit of a personal question to end on, Wednesday. We are in the Christmas magazine. How does Christmas look like for you this year?
Oh, Christmas this year is I mean, I love Christmas. I love Christmas and New Year. I love the whole festive season. For me, it's family, food, couch, Netflix, walks. The switching off, to me, it's a full reset because no one else is working. So it's pretty much the only time of the year where you know your inbox isn't going to fill up just because you've decided to go out and party for 2 or 3 days. That's
Yeah.
kind of I've got, I've got 3 children. I live next door to my parents. I usually like to get other people along. I don't know who's going to be here for Christmas this year. My son's got a girlfriend in the Netherlands and or a friend. I'm not quite sure how you discuss it now, if it's a GF or whatever it is, but he has a very special friend in the Netherlands. My daughter's a dairy farmer, so she may not get the day off. Um, so I'm in the process right now of starting to contact some of my groups of friends because I've got a great big table and I like to fill it and just food. Yeah, food and
Love
fun.
it. Love it. Oh, do you know what? It sounds magical. And exactly like you say, it does feel like a reset. Like it just feels like the time to rest. And I cannot wait for it. So,
Yes.
Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me. Your tips have been fantastic. And I would love to do something with you separately in the new year. So we'll chat about that. But thank you so much, Wendy.
You're very welcome.
Oh,
Thanks very
in
much.
fact,
Oh,
before we go, Wendy, tell people how they can get in touch with you. I'll put the links in the magazine, but you tell people how they can get in touch with you. Maybe look into consultancy. Take it
yeah.
away.
So the single place, which is probably the most efficient right now, is we have a Facebook page which is called The Carbon Shift. So anyone can contact me through that. I'd love a follow. We're literally, I've got 70 followers. We've only started doing it in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, and it's a work in progress. We do have a website. It's pretty poor. It's currently in the process of being shut down. But we're hoping by Christmas that will be opened back up. So I'm hoping to put in sort of 30-minute slots where people can discuss, make that available just as that would be a free consultation, which we'll be able to book in certain slots to discuss their specifics. But yeah, give me a follow on Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn as myself. So always welcome to have a chat or speak to someone directly.
Perfect. Well, I'll link both of those, your LinkedIn and your Facebook in the magazine
Yep.
page, so people can just click off it. But thank you so much, Wendy.
You're very welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.